Stories of your most brutal and cold-blooded actions. Story about debts and consequences. In a major city, two close friends, a father and a son, owned two separate construction companies. The father, with years of experience in the construction field, ran his company with reliability and integrity. His son, who also worked in the construction industry, ran his company with the same degree of professionalism. Fate had it that one transaction put them in a difficult position. Among the father's employees was a man named George. George worked for his father's company, but one day he wanted to purchase a truck that was for sale. He offered to buy the truck in installments since he did not have the entire amount at once. The father, relying on the integrity of his employee, agreed to this plan. All the necessary documents were drawn up, and Vlad received the truck, leaving only a small down payment. However, after that, George was not able to hold on to his previous job. He quit his father's company and opened his own business in the same field. After failing to pay for the truck, George left a large amount of money unpaid. This left his father in a difficult position, and he was left with unfulfilled obligations. His father's son, who learned of the incident, decided to take matters into his own hands. Inspired by his father's story and seeking justice, he decided to use his position to influence a former employee. He hired George as a subcontractor to perform several jobs on his projects. At first, he paid George for the first job to gain his trust and solidify the business relationship. Behind the scenes, however, a different game began. The father's son decided to play out a revenge strategy. After successfully completing the first job, he offered George another project. This time, the amount of the contract was much higher. Vlad, satisfied with the first payments and confident in his immunity, set to work. But soon after the second project began, his father's son decided to play it safe. He skillfully orchestrated the situation so that George was unable to complete the work properly and violated the project deadline. Based on this breach, the father's son created a pretext to terminate the contract and deny payment. As a result, George was stranded, suffered a financial loss of $5,000, and was fired from the project. Story about cable secrets. When I was a teenager, I occasionally rented adult movies through pay-per-view television, PPV, figuring that a small $10 increase in the bill wouldn't be noticed by my dad. It seemed to me that the amount was insignificant to him, and he wouldn't pay much attention to it. However, my dad noticed the increase in the bill and called me into his office. He showed me a list of rented movies and asked me directly if I had rented any. I, a little confused, tried to justify myself by saying that I wasn't interested in watching movies of that genre. Dad believed me and decided to see if it was my older brother, who was 18 at the time. He called my brother over and asked him the same question. My brother was totally puzzled and honestly denied his guilt. However, Dad couldn't believe that his youngest daughter could watch such movies and decided that the brother was responsible. In the end, all the blame fell on him, and he ended up in a bad situation. Although I escaped the consequences, I now realize that honesty would have been the best solution. Story about the Little Hero Plan. When I was in elementary school, I was one of the smallest kids in the class. This caused some problems, especially with children who were older and stronger. One boy in first or second grade often teased and picked on me, which bothered me a lot. I realized that I wouldn't be able to handle him by myself, so I decided to come up with a plan. The next day, during recess, I noticed that this boy was starting to pick on me again. I knew I had to find a way to get him in a bad situation myself. I waited until the playground was more crowded, and then I decided to take action. I climbed up the slide and started letting all the kids go through until he was right behind me. Then, to get the teacher's attention, I yelled his name and the word no. At that point, when I was sure I had the attention of the adults, I purposely dove headfirst down the slide and started crying loudly. The teachers, hearing the screams and seeing that I had fallen, immediately ran over to help. The boy was totally confused, not knowing what to do, and was clearly in trouble. They started to pull him away from the slide, and he looked very confused and angry, especially when he saw me laughing and feeling safe. As a result of the incident, he was suspended from school for a while. I also found out that he was in a lot of trouble at home when he returned. While I wasn't proud that I had to resort to such actions, it made me feel more confident and taught me that sometimes you have to act decisively to protect yourself. From that point on, the boy no longer harassed me, and I continued to go to school without fear of his aggression. This incident was a lesson to me about the importance of being smart and the importance of defending yourself. yourself, even if it requires unconventional methods. Story about digital revenge. When I was younger, I was addicted to an online game, and one day I encountered an unpleasant situation. Someone scammed me out of several $100s worth of items. This happened at a time when cybersecurity was at a low ebb, and many aspects of modern defenses had not yet been implemented. For example, you could easily access someone else's email with just a few details, and there were no blockers for entering incorrect data. Passwords did not require the use of capital letters, numbers, or special characters. To get my items back, I decided to act decisively. I created a few different accounts on a dating site and began contacting potential victims. After some attempts, I managed to attract the attention of one of them, and he started communicating with me under the guise of an attractive girl. Using social engineering techniques, I was able to find out his nickname, birthday, and other personal information. I then used this information to hack into his email account. Using the hacked account, I reset the password for his online game and gained access to his account. I returned all of my items and took everything he had. I completely cleaned out his account, deleted his characters, and even changed their names so that when he logged into the game, the screen would say, "You deserve it." I honestly confessed my deed and did not try to hide my involvement. At that time, the game developers did not intervene in such situations and did not take any measures, leaving the players to deal with it on their own. The boy who cheated me even tried to file a police report, but he was simply ridiculed there. Years later, when we were both adults, I met this man by chance. We talked, and he apologized for what he had done. I also apologized for my actions. He told me that for almost a year after our conflict, he lived in fear that I might show up at his house, given that I knew all of his personal information. Fortunately, we were able to laugh about our silly actions as kids, and now we sometimes socialize as adults, putting the past behind us. Story about words matter. When I was in elementary school, my mom always had a special way of calling me so that I could easily find her among people. It was her personal, warm expression of love, and I got used to it from a very young age. However, when I got older and started going to school, the girls in my class started using this way of addressing me to tease me. They knew it annoyed me and used it to get attention and make fun of me. Since I was used to responding to this particular way of addressing them, every time they called me that, I instinctively turned around. This only added to their enjoyment as they saw me reacting to their jokes. Teachers and school psychologists took no action to stop this behavior, and I felt I was left without support. To get revenge and express my displeasure somehow, I decided to do something unexpected. I took a notebook and asked everyone in my class, which was about 80 people, to sign it. At the top of the page I wrote, "Sign here if you think Taylor is disgusting." After that, I handed the notebook to one of my classmates to give to the rest of the class. When I had collected all the signatures, I gave the notebook to my mom. She opened it and saw all the signatures and the inscription on top. It was quite a painful moment for her, and she cried. I felt that I had done something terrible, and although at that moment I thought I had achieved my goal, I realize now that it was wrong. Story about how my sneakers sent a girl flying. When I was 8 or 9 years old, there was a festival in our town, and one of the main attractions was a swing that spun in a circle. I was very excited and waited impatiently for my turn to ride them. There were a lot of children at the festival at the time, and among them was a girl who kept hanging on the fence next to the swing set. She was disobeying her mom, and it was clearly annoying not only to her mom, but to the other kids as well. When I finally got on the swings, it was important to me to get the most out of the ride. I noticed that the girl still wouldn't budge from the fence and continued to be noisy and annoying. At some point, I decided that I needed to teach her a lesson somehow, so she would learn how to behave. When the swing started spinning at full speed, I stretched my legs out as far as I could, hoping to accidentally hit her. Unfortunately, my action was more impactful than I expected. My Spice Girls style platform sneakers hit her in the face. This affected her balance and she flew off the fence, falling to the ground. I could see that the girl was clearly shocked and perhaps a little upset. The situation caught the attention of the adults, and her mom came to help. I noticed that the girl looked confused and upset, and her mom was concerned about her condition. Now, looking back, I often think about that incident. I wonder how she felt afterwards and how the incident affected her memories of the festival. I also wonder if she remembers that day as often as I do. I wonder if she is okay now and if she still has any negative associations with that event. Story on teen trickery. How I won a new PS2 using DVDs. When I was 16 years old, I borrowed a PlayStation 2 from my older brother and also borrowed a DVD of the movie The Devil's Advocate from a friend. While watching this DVD, the console suddenly stopped working and would no longer read any of the discs. In my immature head, I immediately assumed that the DVD was the cause of the PS2's breakdown. I was concerned that my brother would get mad because his last words were, "Just don't break it." I came up with a plan to avoid the consequences. In the UK at the time, Richard Branson's Virgin stores sold DVDs and CDs. I went to the store, bought a new Devil's Advocate DVD, and replaced it with the one I thought had broken the PS2. The next day, I called the Virgin store and told them that I bought the DVD from them, tried to watch it, and it broke my PS2. To my surprise, the store didn't ignore me, but asked me to bring the disc in for inspection. I brought the disc to the store the next day. They wouldn't even check it and just gave me a new PS2. It was a surprise. The person who handed me the new console said he didn't understand how the disc could have damaged the console. To this I replied, "So why are you replacing it?" They had no answer and I felt a little snippy. Later, I returned the DVD of The Devil's Advocate to a friend. I told my brother everything and gave him a new console. He was surprised and said he already had problems with the PS2 before he gave it to me. Although I realized what I did was wrong, it remains one of my most vivid memories of that time. I'm now 36 years old, and I sometimes remember that incident with a slight chuckle.